The show where anything goes. Motivation, mindset, recovery, philosophy, and life. We become who we are through what we experience. We all have a story, and this is My Backstory with Josh Boyer.
Here we are in beautiful Old Fort, North Carolina at the, I'm going to butcher you just told me the name.
It's Catawba Falls.
Catawba Falls in Old Fort, Black Mountain area-ish of North Carolina.
We're right on the mountain you go over for the Continental Divide, which is like 2,360 feet or something, going right over and goes right into the Asheville area. So this is the edge of the Smokies, and it attaches to the Mount Mitchell.
Nice, man. So I'm here with Zachary Paben from More Heart Than Scars, and it's kind of interesting the way that we linked up. I got a message from my cousin in Mississippi and telling me that their kid goes to the Black Mountain Academy,
right? And
they're like, hey, there's this guy there, Zachary. Really think that you guys should have on your podcast because he's amazing, and kind of shared with me some things that you were doing, taking autistic children to complete Spartan races, and I was like blown away. I was like, man, I actually got tears in my eyes, and I was like, you know what? Like for me, that kind of shit inspires me. That's what moves me. And so I was excited about doing this podcast. Unfortunately, like some things happened with my mother-in-law. Right. I had to cancel the first trip out here. But now here I am. So
here we are.
We made it happen. So I'm here with Zachary, and I want him to share with you guys his backstory, what his upbringing was like, what were some of the things that he experienced while he was growing up, and kind of what got him into that More Heart Than Scars, and what got him into like wanting to help other disabled people kind of figure out that they're capable of so much more. So I'm gonna let him share his incredible story with you, and we'll go from there. So brother, take it away.
Oh, here we go. I was born in California. My dad was a professor and taught English and theater at Oxy. And then my
Occidental College, for those of you that aren't from California.
That's right, Oxy. And so, a lot of kids when they grow up, their first thing they want is a hamburger. The first thing I want is a taco. So like in the soul of my being, I want a taco. That's just like that's like ground zero. And even still, if I'm like stressed out of like my baby food is like I need Mexican food. Like
totally. I'll
go to any place that like some burritos, something or other, and I go in and I ask, hey, do you have horchata? And they're like, if they don't have horchata, I'm like, we don't need to talk anymore. This is not a place for me.
And California's the spot to be for Mexican food. That's for sure.
That's right. Yeah. And so most of my life, it turned out in Florida, there was a lot of Mexican restaurants. In North Carolina, there's a great deal. And then I lived out in Colorado. So I've lived all over the country. And I basically move about where I can get some good Mexican food.
It draws you.
It draws me.
Mexican food.
That's right. And so I was actually down in some place off the coast of Mexico at a bar called Bob Marley's off an island. And
that sounds amazing.
I had to have the nachos. I'm thinking to myself, this is a bad idea. So I was on a cruise ship and they said, whatever you do, don't rent the moped. So immediately, I was with my friend, we're getting the mopeds. Yeah. So the moped that's far out the island, we're looking to try to figure out how much time we had. So we went to the absolute furthest point out. Yeah. And I ordered the most dangerous thing possible. And then I had a gallstone attack. I didn't realize that I ultimately have something called chronic pancreatitis, right, which came from the gallstones. But which we'll get back to the story is that when I was a kid, I drank a lot. Yeah. And so, I'm a recovering alcoholic. So I ultimately developed into full-blown chronic pancreatitis. But
from being an alcoholic?
Yes. So my initial response, my first big hit was a gallstone attack right after eating nachos at the Bob Marley bar. Oh. And I'm riding back, and I'm on the moped. I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm going to make it back to the boat.
How painful was that?
I thought gallstones were painful. On my scale of really shitty things, I thought it was reasonably painful, but I could still ride a moped.
Yeah.
Not as bad as ripping your fingers off. It happened to me when I was 10. But nowhere, probably the worst thing I've experienced is the pancreatitis. When the pancreas begins to digest itself, it feels like being stabbed. I used to have that expression, like a stabbing feeling. I thought that's just ridiculous. Right. People say it, and I've never been stabbed. Why does everyone reference being stabbed?
It feels like a hot knife.
It's a hot knife in me. And so years ago, I'm out with my kid, and my son sends me a katana sword. Right. I'm out with my daughter, and she's like, Dad, let's go in the woods. I'm like, bring your sword. I'm like, okay, this is a great idea. So I've got this katana thing. There was a tree that was, branches were in the way of the trail, and I decided to clear it. And I stuck my leg out there, and I took a big swing. And as I swung a couple times, no problem.
Yeah.
But we'll get into it. I don't have the ends of my fingers, so I don't have a really great purchase on a thin piece of metal. So I went clear through this branch about the size of my wrist, and I wasn't planning on that. And it flew through my hand, and it shot into my calf muscle right there. There's a big, it went in like 4 inches. It's a nice scar.
Yeah.
It went right in there, and then I was like, oh, so this is what a stabbing pain feels like.
Oh, yeah.
Turns out those guys are total pussies because an actual pancreatitis hurts way more than a stabbing pain.
Yep. Yeah, I was trying to. I had not a similar, I guess it's a similar story because I stabbed myself. But I had this brilliant idea as a kid. I was like, I want to open this battery pack of one of those RC cars,
Sure,
remote control cars. I wanted to see how it worked and whatever. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take this thing. I'm gonna open this thing up. So I grab a knife, and I think it was a Cutco knife too, if I remember correctly. And I'm like trying to pop I'm like, let me get through this thing, dude. It goes through, and then bam, I stab myself right in the hand.
Yeah.
And so the knife is sticking out the other side of my hand, not all the way through. It's my skin's up, and I'm trying not to vomit. I'm like, oh, do what I just do. So the first, obviously, the pain was pretty gnarly, but my thought was oh, dude, my parents are gonna be so pissed.
I'm in trouble.
I'm in trouble, dude.
I'm in trouble. What
so
am I gonna do?
So I pulled the knife out, and I'm running it under cold water. I'm like, shit, the fat's starting to come out, and I'm like, oh, this is bad.
This is not good.
And so what I did as a kid, I took the knife and I put it and I shut the drawer with a knife sticking out.
Yeah.
So I could have a story to tell my parents as to
story.
how it happened. I was like, so I was doing the dishes, I was drying them, I dropped the towel, I went to go down to pick up the towel, put my hand on the counter, the knife was sticking out, and it got me.
Okay.
It's a pretty believable story.
It's a pretty believable story.
Dude, honestly, I didn't tell them the truth about that until I think I was an adult. That story was all bullshit, you know what I mean? Because I just didn't want to get in trouble for being an idiot.
Right.
But anyway, so I know the feeling of stabbing pain. I know exactly what a stabbing pain feels like.
So I think pain is a big part of the story of trying to figure out what to do with pain. I think a lot of my addiction dealt with physical pain, but also emotional, mental pain, nightmares, etc. So when I was a little kid, we started out in California, then we moved to St. Louis area. My dad was a college professor at a small community college. It's the same where John Goodman went to the same school as my dad. So my dad's the famous guy, director, and John Goodman, So I thought that was kind of a cool thing. So that was Merrimack Community College in St. Louis. And my parents bought a neat old house that was completely haunted. A guy killed himself in the guest room.
Oh, shit.
The prices were down. It was a huge old home, and all my nightmares in my life go back to being in that house, which is pre-losing my fingers. So I would always end up stuck in that house, and had a creepy, huge fan, a ventilation fan for those 100-year-old houses. Mm-hmm. It's 3 stories tall, and in the attic. So the back doors to the attic, you'd open up this fan. It was it seemed to me as big as you and I are. I'm sure it wasn't that big, but it would open up these levers and just suck all the hot air out to the deal.
Yeah.
Up in the attic space there, my dad we're trying to expand it or work on it. And he was hammering up to put a picture up, and the hammer went through the wall. And they pulled back and they looked, and there was an old rocking chair and some other weird shit just walled off. It was just a very, very creepy house.
Definitely, man.
So my dad was a college professor there, and then he put on some with the little butterflies and moths checking us out.
Yeah.
He put on some stage performances in Lake of the Ozarks. So Lake of the Ozarks comes into the story. So there's not that TV show Ozark.
Have you seen it?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's right on the money. It is so creepy for me to watch that show because my grandparents had a lake house. Yep. They were my grandfather was a lawyer.
But they weren't the local meth dealers.
No. They were not the local people, and but there's that feeling of the hillbilly pride around that, and the anger about the land being flooded, and the resentment towards the rich people buying up, the land. So that's ultimately where I lost my fingertips was in the Lake of the Ozarks. So my dad put on a dinner theater place. They built a stage, and they ended up getting all the wood from it. And my dad built this treehouse for me. It was a 2.5 story tall treehouse. And he made it like a poop deck on a ship, and it was very theatrical. My dad was a theater guy, so they built this incredible playhouse. So my first big experience of getting hurt was I was up on the top of the this treehouse. It was amazing. It had a trap door. It had a zip line. It was like I was the coolest kid in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And the screens were getting kicked out on it. So I decided from watching, Evel Knievel, other great inspirational things. I'm almost 50 now, so Evel Knievel, G.I. Joe, that was the stuff. So I decided to wrap a rope around the top of the playhouse or the treehouse, wrap it around my waist, lean back with a hammer in my hand, and I was going to go down. I am 9 years old when this is going down. So I'm out on the top of the thing, and I'm hammering, trying to hammer the screen. I look and see the rope go, whoo, whoo, whoo. I'm like, So I take about a good 20-footer, fall, break my wrist, badly, of course, both the radius and the elbow would snap. And, I shook it off. My dad said, don't play with ropes.
Right.
Don't go fix the screen. I'll do this. So I tried to hide it. I did the whole, and I just held it in, acted like nothing happened. So hours went by, and my dad's like, you need to go, clean such and stuff or pick something up. And then I was like grimacing a little bit. He goes, we knew you were hurt. So I'm at the hospital, and they're like, what did you do? And I couldn't come up with a good story. I was like, I was
repelling off of my
house. I saw it on TV. It's fine. I saw it in a movie. I'm good. Yeah. So I have this. From that moment, I had some pretty good fear of heights. That was a
healthy respect. For
respect for falling down and going boom.
Yep.
And so a little after that, Patrick and I, my best friend, was with a Catholic neighborhood. It was like a working class neighborhood right next to East St. Louis. The whole Nelly thing with the Band-Aid on there. He'd get his ass kicked in real life. I mean, it was dangerous, right? So I wasn't Catholic. I was Episcopalian in a Catholic neighborhood right on the edge of some very dangerous spots. Our first, games were like street hockey. I remember a kid named Jimmy would get the neighborhood boys to okay, we had to learn to fight for so long without crying. And if we could, then we could play street hockey. That was a tryout.
That's when kids were way more tough, dude.
Completely unsupervised. You have to get it. We'd have all these ridiculous things okay, all right, Jimmy's gonna those metal swing sets where it had a bench thing. Yep. And what you had to do was two kids would swing back and forth, and you'd have to jump in front of it and stand there and take a hit. Yep. And if you could take the hit without being a wuss, then the next stage of whatever our the original Fight Club setup, I
wish kids were still doing that today.
Oh my God, it was great. I remember knocking me over and knocking the wind out of me, and getting back up. You get the shit knocked out of you, you get back up, you don't cry, and you stand it. So we learned the word fuck, and there was this kid who was really mean to us.
Such a great word.
Such a great word, and so I use it on Eric. All these super Catholics. So Patrick and I told this one kid who was older than us, I said, fuck you. And then the kid got really pissed, and we ran back to that big old haunted house, and it had a glass door on the back porch, right? So we run in, we slammed the back door, and we couldn't get to lock it in time. So Patrick and I are on one side, and of course, this Eric kid's way bigger than us, and we're pushing against the glass as hard as we could, and we're trying to keep, he's going to kill us and all this shit, and the glass exploded.
Oh, shit.
And it cut right into my friend's, into Patrick's, right into this thumb and finger, badly. And so we took it. Other kid ran away. We go upstairs. We ran cold water over it. I don't know what it was about unsupervised children in those types of neighborhoods, but cold water fixed anything.
Fixes everything.
So we kept running the cold water over it. It was the blood just kept coming. And my mom came, saw we got her, and she had to hold on to his finger and dealing with that. So it's interesting that by the time, here I am at 10, at the Lake of the Ozarks at my grandparents' place. Yeah. I'm playing with a cable car setup that my grandmother had because she was in a wheelchair, and I got my hand stuck in the cable that helps pull the car up the hill, and my fingers were caught, and I had to actually pull and tear them off. But in that moment, my mom ran up there after my friend was with me. He took off, and by myself, I'm screaming. She comes up, picks up my fingers, and then she's holding on my hand. She had that experience with my best friend. The doctor said, you did the right thing by putting apply the pressure. Yep. And so my uncle's driving, my uncle's girlfriend's on one side, my mom's side on the other, and they're squeezing my hands as tight as they can, each using two hands. So I have 7 fingertips gone, and my pointer on my left hand was cut vertically in half. So they're squeezing there and holding on as tight as they could to try to stop the bleeding. And that's a lot of where my nightmares were. They would go right to that point. I'd wake up and feel the blood in my hair, I'd feel like what it was, the blanket in my eyes, what it felt like to have the air in the wounds. That was, so when I would go to sleep at night, a lot of times I'd be back in those moments.
Yeah.
And that really, that messed me up. And so in between operations, I learned if I drank some, because this is the kind of parenting I had. I remember I had a really bad cold and I couldn't sleep. My mom gave me a little bit of
a hot toddy.
A little hot toddy, and I could go to sleep. And I remember then I thought, my dad went on. We moved from the St. Louis area down to Florida. My dad started working for Disney World. That's when I got hurt. Went back to visit my grandparents, who still lived in that St. Louis, Ozarky, Belleville, right on the edge of St. Louis and area. And that's where I ended up getting hurt. So that's where I got the idea. If I drink, if I just have a little bit of whiskey or whatever, and of course my parents had a stock bar, I could go to sleep.
Were they drinkers like your parents?
They would when they'd have parties. My dad would run big events, and there was always, every house they had, a bar was a part of the house, and having big events. We had parties where 50 people, they'd be catered sometimes, and they'd have live musicians, and so all the houses in this neighborhood, there was a lot of alcohol. So we went from my dad being a college professor, really struggling, to moving into a very ritzy neighborhood in Windermere, Florida, which is right next to Orlando. So it was a big shift. So here I was being back with Jimmy and Patrick hollering and fighting in the backyard and playing hockey. And I moved down to Florida where hockey was not a thing.
Yep.
All of a sudden there was palm trees and lakes and, backyard fighting was not the norm. There was football.
Yeah. Wasn't acceptable anymore.
It didn't make sense just to fight for no reason. You could fight during a football game that was more, focused. And these kids had a very different upbringing, and their parents had a very different lifestyle. So I was always in that, I didn't quite fit in. And so I'd be around people that had money, but my earlier years my parents were really struggling. And so I felt a little bit more connected to that. I wanted to fit in with the guys who could take a hit and get back up again. Those are the ones, that I respect. Evel Knievel jumping over this stuff. And that's why I got hurt. I was we were jumping off it was a cable car that my grandmother used that she would roll the wheelchair in to go up and down. So I jumped off the thing first. But I'm an old fart, so Superman in pajamas, that was faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, can leap over tall buildings, single bounce. So when I sat down and was pulling on the cable, showing off of my friend who took off after I got hurt, it gave that illusion of that Superman thing. Yeah. So I had this stuff, in my background, I had this fear of heights and the losing my fingers. And so I ended up going to a camp called Mondamin in North Carolina. And we were on a high ropes course. And
what was it called again?
Camp Mondamin.
Okay.
I, friend of man. It's from a Hiawatha poem. I think it's this idea that comes by wrestling. Basically, this spirit guide wrestled with this man, this Native American guy, and they wrestled. And then he kills the guy and buries him, and corn comes out of the ground. And so it's like that Jacob wrestling with the angel story. How do you get life out of fighting, So that's a theme in my life here. Yeah. So I'm up on this high ropes course, and I'm going along, and I get to something called the Postman's Walk, where you're standing on a steel cable, holding on to a steel cable. Now, I hadn't touched the cable since I lost my fingers. Right. So I'm way up there. Of course, I don't like heights from falling. I'm holding on to the steel cable, standing on a steel cable. The counselor's like, "You're fine. There's a steel cable they have these lobster claws you're tied into and clipped in so that it can't break. It's so strong. You're okay." And I was not. Right. So I didn't know what PTSD was. I didn't understand what a flashback was. All I knew that I was absolutely paralyzed in that situation.
Oh, for sure, man.
Just completely shut down, ugly crying, snot. I think I probably pissed a little bit. I'm shaking out of control. And this counselor, Bernie Miller, climbs out there and gets close, but doesn't get all the way next to me. And just talks to me through the next step. He's like, "You know how to get on your bunk bed?" "Yes." And got down, you put this hand here. And he just got me through how to get through the trees. And I step by step got through each part of that high ropes course. And so that was sort of an awakening, but I didn't understand what it was about. So it was still pretty raw. I was 13 years old. That was a powerful moment. I was like, okay, it psychically shifted. My reality changed.
All it usually takes is one moment like that, There was I don't know if you heard the dad when we were up on the waterfall right now. There was a dad up there, and the kid was wanting to go out where you and I took that picture.
Yeah.
And he was kind of hesitant, I don't know if I want to. He's like, "Did you see that guy's shirt? What it says?" And I'm wearing my no fear shirt. Yeah. And he's saying no fear, know that it's there.
Right.
But go past it, And I was like, oh, it's kind of cool. You know what I mean? Like he's giving his son like a lesson.
Here's how you do it.
I
I heard something I wasn't sure was going on. The kid's going out, and I immediately turned to him and go, so if you fall, you spread your legs. I'm going right to that. I'm going like, hey, yeah, if you do fall, here's how you don't fall badly.
High likelihood that you're probably going to fall. And if you do,
you just land on your ass, spread your legs, spread
and
your
he
hands.
didn't move after that, dude.
I think you went out there a little bit.
Did he?
Dad said that's what you do. You land on your butt and spread your legs, you know.
I kind of kept walking, so I don't know what he did. I hope he went out to the spot that we were at.
I hope he went out there. It was a beautiful place. So I had that awakening, and I was like, wasn't sure, like something shifted in me, and it opened a door up to a lot of those more repressed parts of that memory. So that's like I'm 13. Then I went back the next summer, and I was horseback riding. I grew up around horses, and I really enjoyed being with them. And I've never had a horse step on me, never had a kick, I never had a bad experience. And so one day I'm out there and I'm walking around the horse. And you're supposed to put your hand on the horse to let it know where you are. Yeah. And this horse just decided to step down on my foot. And it just put its foot down and just held it there long enough that I had to pull as hard as I could to get my foot out. Well, that immediately, since my fingers were pinched off and I had to pull and tear them off, it reset. It's like the next summer I'm doing that. But in between all these summers, when I get well enough to go, the bones grow, scars don't. So they would have, as the bones begin to grow out, they'd have to shave the bone back and get it soft and supple again, pull the skin back over and re-heal. So it kept recreating the experiences. Then I had these other experiences that were...
Yeah, when you were telling me that story last night, I was like, holy shit, man, I can only imagine. The only thing that I had close to that, not from me personally, but from my grandma, she had a wound on her leg. And so she's diabetic and stuff, so what just wouldn't heal. Plus, she just wasn't really taking care of herself. But like I think it was like 3 times a week, maybe twice a week, she'd have to go and get it debrided.
Yes.
And it's like, she would like be, I would watch her like at the house, and she would be like, I can see, and the physical response to her anxiety was like, I could watch it like rising, you know? And I was like, so I would ask her, what's the matter? And she's like, I know I'm about to go to the doctor, you know? I'm like, whatever. And she just hated it because it was like going through that torture every single time. So imagine what you were going through. Like I watched it, I saw it. So I wasn't there with you, but I was there with my grandma. And it was like, man, this is not.
It was a rough experience because what had happened is that I have to tie my hands above my head, and so when I had to get my hands free, my left hand, the bones, my wrist was stuck, was in a weird angle, so I had to break those bones to get out. And so I think sort of that part of that experience of breaking my wrist before, like these things were like building blocks, like you're crossing a river, you gotta jump from one rock to another. And so I'm having these experiences every couple of years. I'm having to have the operations again. They tie my hands over my head. Whoever's in the room. When I was 10, having your grandma hold your penis to pee is embarrassing. Right. When you're 14, it's horrible.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's just definitely. Especially if it's a micro penis.
Oh my god, that's right. I'd will myself to be bigger. I was like, oh my god. And then you also get the whole experience of like the opiates, like they're pushing opiates on you, the morphine. And then I've had so many surgeries and so many responses. I started, there's a lot of addiction in my family. Very powerful people that do well. Successful alcoholics, but there's a lot of successful alcoholics. So I was pre-wired for this stuff. And so my reactions to the opiates was like weird. Like I could feel it going in my veins. It got funky. My stomach would get kind of weird. And so they started giving me fentanyl to deal with, not fentanyl, Phenergan. They'd give me a Phenergan shot to try to like calm my stomach down. And so I had to be on these like schedules of just shots. Right. And just when you're in pain, you get the shot. And then I have all this, and then of course, you get on enough morphine, your stomach shuts down, and nobody explained any of this to me.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that could have been a large part of like what with the pancreatitis and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
it'd be a huge part of that because I know for me, like, and I don't know if I've even shared the story on the podcast, but whatever. A large part of like me taking all the opiates for my back surgeries and whatnot, like just completely shuts down your digestive tract. You're completely fucked. Like giving myself enemas and like, it was terrible. And so as a result, as a 30-year-old, I was having a hemorrhoidectomy. You know what I mean? Because I was so fucking jacked up.
Oh, it completely shuts you down. Like, if when people who don't have experience with opiates watch Trainspotting, they go, "Oh, that's an interesting, kind of funny, edgy movie." When you've been on opiates and you're like, when he has to take the nastiest shit in Scotland, like he finds that bathroom is like, because when the floodgates open, it opens, and it doesn't matter where you are, you're gonna go to the bathroom. And so that whole scene where he's like, diving in the toilet to go get that stuff. So I remember as a kid, like I was seeing movies like Drugstore Cowboy, Midnight Express, all these different things around drugs. Like, why do I relate to this so much? Because in my life, it was a really nice neighborhood where I was.
Those are usually the most drug-filled areas in the world.
I know,
dude.
it was all around.
No pharmaceutical shit. Then it's okay.
It's pharmaceutical. It's pharmaceutical.
It's okay.
So in between being on the prescribed and the injected, then there was the alcohol, and that was going on. So by the time I'm 19 years old, not 19, I'm 18 before I go off to college. My mom said there was this faith healer guy at my church, and I'm laughing. I'm thinking like Jim and Tammy Faye Baker, like, yeah, absolutely, a faith healer. So this guy comes to an Episcopal church. So first of all, I'm laughing. The idea of a faith healer at an Episcopal church is very liberal, very intellectual, very not conservative in some ways.
Do they wear the costumes at the Episcopal church?
Yeah, the priests wear the costume. It's like Catholic-like,
Okay, that's what I thought.
You don't have to say a Hail Mary if you masturbate, but when I was a kid, my dad said, if you masturbate to the point that your penis hurts, back off a little bit till it stops. So that was kind of
that's probably the best advice ever, dude.
Everybody does it. Man. If you go to the point that it hurts, dude, you've gone too far.
Yeah, right? my stepdad, man, they were like really involved with the church and stuff like that. And I think he just didn't know what to say and what to do. I mean, because he knew that I was like a freaking, when you're 14, you become like this monkey, where it's like, it's total monkey brain, where it's like, I don't care what's going on, I just need to jerk off,
It just needs to happen.
I remember him telling me that, like, masturbation's a sin, son.
Oh, God.
And I was like, really? And he's like, oh, you're going to go to hell if you masturbate. Dude, and I, like, as a kid, dude, like, I had so much shame about it, dude, about, like a primal, like, biological, totally normal experience, And so, like, I always told myself, like, if I ever had boys, and now I have 4 of them, that I will never shame them.
Don't shame them.
It's like, no, dude.
Yeah,
like,
my dad was like, he said,
that's funny. Though,
I was going to Catholic school. He says, you're lucky you're not Catholic because like he said, they think you could go to hell for this. We just think, things in moderation. Too much.
If your penis starts hurting, back off.
Back off. Let it heal up for a couple of days.
If you're going for the Crisco and all kinds of things in the house, then you might have a problem.
If you've gone too far, you've gone too far. So yeah, that was. So
that is awesome.
I got nothing. So I'm giggling at the idea of this minister priest coming in and doing a faith healing thing, and I was like, I'm pissed. I'm having nightmares. I'm drinking more and more and more.
Yeah.
I'm hiding out from who I am as a person. So I'm doing sports, and I'm drinking.
Right.
And I'm being involved in the church. Like I was doing all the things to be the best kid I could be. Like doing varsity level sports. We go on trips. We drink. We do all kinds of stupid shit. But swim, wrestle, run. Like all those things. I was involved in theater groups. Anything I could do to not be still enough to let that monkey brain start reliving those things in my head. Because I was angry. And in the midst of this, I experienced getting molested by an older kid. And so I just have I was a pissed off kid that wanted to fight. And so when I'd swim as hard as I could, so I wouldn't take a breath so I could feel that. When I wrestled, I'd go as hard as I could. When I would, everything I would do, I'd just be on the edge of it.
I think that's very common, right? Amongst addicts. It's like they're obviously like hiding something. Right. They're like trying to cover something. And that's usually how the problem starts, right? And the same thing with, if I look at my own life and I look at the people that I know and look at their lives, like I was a very aggressive kid. Yeah. Super aggressive. But because my upbringing was pretty questionable, there was some things that happened that that no kid should ever experience. Right. And now it makes sense to me as an adult. Looking back, it's like, no shit, I was aggressive. Yeah. And I was angry.
I remember there was a neighborhood kid that was across the way that lived behind me. He was kind of a jerk, and I had some darts, and I remember throwing them one at him and sticking his leg, and then saw him charging at me. I'm like, all right, finally. I picked a fight. Because these guys were like, oh, we shouldn't do that. But you throw a dart at a kid that sticks in their thigh, it's on, And I was still really hyperactive through all these times between my surgeries, and I was breaking my arms and hitting, just being stupid, right? Yeah. And I remember getting in trouble. I'm in the principal's office getting paddled. They used to paddle back then. And some kid talked shit to me, and I had a cast on my arm at this really nice elementary school.
Club.
Yeah, it's a wonderful club. I hit the kid, knocked him down. I'm in the principal's office. So my Sunday school teacher, Mrs. Field, she sat me down. This is like when I was a young kid, and said, this is ridiculous. She knew I was angry. Right. And she turns out to be the mother of my best friend, that I do all this stuff with the More Hard the Scars with. So she looks at me and she goes, we're gonna pray. And I'm like, all right, so she had this really specific prayer in my Sunday school group, hands on me, saying that I would not raise my hand to fight unless it was to defend. And then she was such a powerful woman. Like when I got injured, my dad went down the street because we were in the Ozarks. My dad was living we lived in Florida, but we went back to visit my grandparents. And when he heard I got hurt, didn't know how hurt I was, went to, the Fields house because Marilyn was a Sunday school teacher, really spiritual woman. And Dr. Bob was a surgeon. Yeah. And so, orthopedic surgeon. And so they were consoling my father. And my dad's not a spiritual guy really at the time. And he said, I could just feel this light and energy around this woman just praying over me and praying for you when you were hurt.
There's a real energy to that shit, man.
There was absolutely, this woman was so powerful. So I felt this force about me that just shifted. And I really haven't raised my hand to start about. I've done a lot of things to protect other people. I've been involved in lots of restraints and helping people, but I stopped looking for the fight. Like when I would get to that point, I would just feel that. I would feel that in me. So I'm at the same church where I had this crazy experience where I'm probably like 14 or so. I just stopped, or maybe I was 13, just stopped fighting. Yeah. So I'm back at the same church. This faith healer guy comes up and delivers a very intellectual sermon, which always disarms me. Smart people, you want to turn me on, talk smart. And so this guy, it's like kryptonite. So he had a really good sermon, and it was about faith. And so I met with the guy, and we went back in the room, and I'm thinking, oh my God, we just were learning about the Catholic priests and all this stuff. Like, what's going to happen to me? What's going to go down? And so he brought back up the thing, the accident, and had me talk about it. I hadn't really talked about this thing. And he said, I was like, look, I mean, I'll believe you. My fingers were like, so I'm not that kind of a faith healer. I'm here to heal your faith. And so he starts bringing me through the accident, and we're talking about it, praying about it, and he said, well, who was with you? And then I remembered really clearly that I felt the presence of like a big dude, like a big, 30-something-year-old guy was with me. And, I just learned the word fuck previously. And I heard in my voice when he said, you're going to have to pull as hard as you can. And I don't want you to look because it will fuck you up. Yeah. I heard this grown voice. I mean, that's when my hands are stuck. I mean, I'm stuck. I mean, I'm the pressure's on. There's no way out of it. And I hear this voice like, I want you to pull as hard as you can. I don't want you to look because it will fuck you up for life. Those are the words. So I pulled as hard as I could, and I didn't look. So I'm like having this like prayer memory thing with this guy, and I remember like in the.
Are you sobbing at this point or no?
When I'm talking to the guy, no. Like it got really like clear. Like I was like remembering it, and I just felt like this presence. Like there was just a strong sense. And a lot of my military friends that I've talked to that have been in really crazy situations, like I don't know, I was going around a corner and this guy pulled me back. Or we were going in a Humvee and the people were shooting at us, and I heard this guy say something to me, like, but they weren't there. Like, one of my friends got pulled off the road, and he said when I told the EMTs there was this big guy, this gruff guy pulled me off the road. Who was it? And they're like, nobody pulled you off the road. And there's like, I guess it's like God in the ditch or God in the deck or in that like moment. I don't know how to explain it, like, but that the mystical idea of God
experience it to really understand
gets really real. There was something beyond me was present with me. So then we're riding to the hospital, and I was saying to my mom, am I going to die? She says, no, we're going to pray. And I remember feel like I was being held. Now, to my left, my uncle's girlfriend was holding both my hands with both her hands, one hand with two of her hands. My mom on the other side was holding, there's nobody's arms around me. My grandfather's in the front seat, my uncle's driving, and the fingertips were in an ice bag in between the two seats in the old orange van. It was like a 1970s van. Yeah, so gross. And like, and I had terry cloth clothing on while it happened. So that, blood sticks to terry cloth. That's a t-shirt. So I'm looking at the fingertips in the ice bag thinking, my God, I'm going to die. My mom's like, no, you're not, because you're going to pray. And I'm thinking, at that point, what had I done? Well, I masturbated maybe to the point of too often, I had done a few things, but I was fearful. But I felt this sense of being held. And so I'm talking to the guy, and the guy says, well, who's holding you? And then in this like sort of like dream memory state thing, I'm like, I think it's Jesus. I was like, well, what's he doing? I think he's crying and holding me. He goes, of course he's crying, you're his kid. And he said to me, and this is the thing that began to shift it all. This is the foundation of how I was able to get sober. He said, when you have nightmares, when you remember this, if he was holding you then, he's holding you now. You don't have to be afraid anymore. Right. And that was, I walked out of there, and it was such a profound peace that here I was with all these nightmares, that I was dealing with all the stuff, by some pretty unhealthy coping mechanisms. But now here is this idea in my head that if I was being held then, when I would get my hand stuck in something then I would just breathe and slow down and go, okay, if he's holding me then, he's holding me now. I don't have to be afraid. I continued on drinking until Thanksgiving of my freshman year in college, because that was just before I went off to college.
Yeah.
I attempted suicide, got into, just was a mess.
Yeah.
And I started going to meetings. My very first meeting was at the Lake of the Ozarks.
Oh, was it really?
My uncle.
Imagine that. Full circle.
Full circle. And it's the very place my grandfather later, fell down the stairs when he was drinking. He was a brilliant man. He fell down the stairs and got a blood clot in his brain. So he went from being a genius to, having to be cared for. Yeah, not a vegetable. He was a walking around guy that had part of his brain work great, and other parts not so much.
Did he quit drinking after that?
Yeah, he did. And his whole life was changed completely. So. And in that same lake house where I lost my fingers, my grandfather fell down, my grandmother's hips deteriorated, she had to get the wheelchair. In that same place I'm at, it was 1988, and it's Thanksgiving of my freshman year in college. Dr. Vandersloot said to me, over break, go to a mental health facility. And I was like, I can't go to a mental health facility. I'm going to Lake of the Ozarks. It's in the middle of nowhere. And she says, there'll be an AA meeting there. So Thanksgiving Day,
they knew you had a problem or what?
no, it was just Dr. Van was a recovering addict, and she assigned people to go on adventures. She come back with a 3x5 card, right, and tell your story of a mental health facility that you visited.
Yeah.
So I was like, I can't go because there'll be an AA meeting. So on Thanksgiving Day, after we ate, it's around like 4:00. I look at my uncle and I go, hey, you still go to those meetings? He goes, yeah, I go to the meetings. I go, well, I'm supposed to go for my school, my class, but there's not going to be a meeting on Thanksgiving. He goes, and not here on the Lake of the Ozarks. He goes, oh yeah, there is. It's called the Dry Dock. There's a meeting tonight at 8 p.m. Let's go. I'm like, okay. Fuck. So there's a bunch of old dudes and my uncle, who I love my uncle. My mom's brother is a guy I really respect. He was the guy in the car when he picked up my fingers. Yeah. He was driving like a madman. He loved me fiercely. My dad was a very theatrical man. Traveled around, did a lot of stuff with Disney. I didn't have a lot of positive masculine role models of how to do sports, how to shoot a gun, how to go skiing, how to adventure. But my Uncle Jay was definitely that guy. Yeah. So Uncle Jay takes me to my first meeting, and I was the last to speak. It went all around the meeting, and I'm thinking, oh, these guys are going to be like some hillbillies and talk some dumb shit. One guy was talking about Siddhartha, which I had just read previously. Yeah. Herman Hesse's Siddhartha. The guy's talking about Siddhartha in the AA meeting. I'm like, no way. This other guy, there are all these different conversations and about feelings and about thoughts about, wanting to maybe kill themselves, but dealing with the anxiety and the drinking and all this stuff was going around. And it got to me, and I shared, and my drinking was very private. Even though I was a really public, goofy guy, I drank in secret. Yeah. And the few times I did drink in public, afterwards, people would say to me, maybe you shouldn't do that.
Were you angry or what?
I would get naked. I'd get into fights.
I was notorious for getting naked, man.
I was just I was on the swim team, so being naked.
I wonder what that is.
I don't know.
Because in high school, if you ask Brendan, my 12-year-old, was talking to one of my buddies or whatever, and I was telling him, when I was younger, man, I would drink and I would get naked at parties, and everyone saw my
your junk,
my little micro,
You can't have a micro and be confident about being naked. Yeah, right. So, actually, it's on the swim team. It's actually better to be naked than to be in those weenie benders. It's actually better looking.
Small fries.
Yeah, to be naked than to have that bathing suit on.
So yeah, man, I was always naked, dude. I'll go to parties and get hammered and just get naked. Hey, whip them out. It's all whip them out.
Jump in the pool.
I don't know where that comes from, but yeah, I grew out of it though.
Yeah, well, when I was drinking, I would hook up my friends' girlfriends. I would, I didn't even when I was drunk, I didn't fight it as much. I'd get close to it. Right. I was sort of a bully when I was drunk because I knew that if they hit me, I could kick their ass. And so that was my Sunday school teacher prayed for me, no more fighting. So I was almost pushing it, because whenever I get ready to go for it, if I didn't have a good reason to do it, yeah, it was like a choker on me, almost like a dog choker. Code, yeah, I was like, oh, okay, all right, I'm not gonna. But if I was drunk, talking shit to somebody, then maybe it would happen. Because there was that. I wanted that contact. I wanted that experience of the concussive hit, and that moment that you don't know if you're going to make it or not. Oh, yeah. And if you don't interact in that way to get some of your feelings out, because fighting in the movies is total bullshit. It's any of us that have been involved in any sort of physical conflict know that it's only lasts a couple of minutes. It usually goes to the ground. You're breathing so hard, you feel like your head's gonna just explode. Your chest, everything's just clenched in. It's like that. You get that feeling in your throat between you wanting to cry and scream and it's a rush. The only thing I found close to it was rock climbing without a rope. Fighting and rock climbing without a rope has that edge that if you're not doing drugs, there's nothing quite like it. Yeah. So I go to that first meeting and I hear these other men talking about things that I knew I was struggling with. Yeah. And my mom, when I was a little kid, she took me to my very first Alateen meeting. She's like, look, in your family.
It's like Al-Anon, but
Al-Anon, Alateen. There's a lot of alcoholism in your family. I'm like, yeah. Then she went through the list. Like, even though they have good jobs, even though there's still alcoholism and, and Al-Anon. And so I went to these Alateen meetings and these Al-Anon things as when I was younger, and I heard about the condition of the disease. Right. And I heard that people that have the allergy to alcohol, when they drink one, they usually can't stop it. It opens to the next door. Right. So at a very young age, I had my drinking ruined because I understood it, and I didn't want to become an alcoholic. One of the guys that molested me was drunk while it was going on. I mean, I didn't like the smell of it. I only drank it to get fucked up. I only drank it to go to sleep. Right. And a lot of times when my dad was either gone, traveling around the country, and when he came back, he drank a lot, and he was really distant. So I didn't have great feelings about alcohol. It's something that I used. My grandparents, when they drank, they weren't very nice when they drank. They were disrespectful to people. That they had people that were, quote, the help, that they were meaner to when they drank. It wasn't like I looked at alcohol and said, it's a great thing. Yeah. But yet, in secret, I was drinking a lot. Yeah. And so I'm in that meeting, and the last thing I ever wanted to become was an alcoholic. So we went around, they said, if you have a desire to stop drinking, and I had a desire, because I tried to stop drinking. I tried to never be. I was always trying to tell me from the time I was like 11, saying like, don't become an alcoholic. Like I had this in my, don't become an alcoholic. You're not going to be one of those guys. It's not, you're going to be different. You're not going to, I had all these cautionary tales from my family, but it didn't matter. I mean, I was that guy from the first time. I felt it run down my throat, catch fire in my belly, melt over my head, and just say, more.
It's one of those feelings that my wife always talks about it, where it's like you feel like this tingle like go across your body, It's like catching that buzz, and then you're like, oh man, that feels good.
Feels good.
And so then you start like chasing it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Next thing you know, you're like completely obliterated, and then you wake up the next day and trying to put all the pieces. Well,
I would always go to the point that I'm like ready to pass out, and I was on the bed, and like I would drink to the point that the bed would spin. I remember this. If you spread out, if you get all four corners of the bed with your arms and legs and tuck your feet around the edges of it and hold on tight, you don't fall off the bed when you're drunk. That is one of the experiences.
I usually drop my leg on the floor and dropping the anchor, so I would touch the ground, and then that would keep the room from spinning, and I'm like, this is so ridiculous, man. Yeah. So ridiculous.
But I love that. It was kind of like that fight. It was like that once you hit somebody, you size them up. We're always sizing people. I mean, even when you first pulled up, we probably looked at each other, we sized each other up like, you can we'd fuck each other up. It's like this thing, like, I wouldn't go good. Right. And, we better figure out how to be friends. Right. There's like that. But even so, when you cross that first line and the violence happens, or it's the first time you're fooling around with a new woman, like there's like this, like, what's gonna happen? Yeah. And that feeling a little bit out of control, that rush comes up. So we're going around the meeting. I hear all the people. It comes back to my time, and I say, I don't know if I'm an alcoholic or not. I have a desire to stop drinking. I'm going to pick up one of these white chips and prove I'm not an alcoholic. Right. And they looked at me like, good luck with that. And I picked up that white chip, and I went back to the lake house, and then we went back to St. Louis to some friends, old people I used to like drive into East St. Louis. Now, East St. Louis is a white person, but not a lot of them. Right. And we would go into East St. Louis to get alcohol underage. And I was with the guys that I did that stuff with, and like I was at this party. There was all this alcohol, so I just tried to hook up with some girl. I was like, okay, I'm not an alcoholic. I have this chip. I'm gonna prove I'm not an alcoholic. And the whole night I was fucking miserable. Yeah. And so I get back, and then I was holding on to it. I didn't tell anybody I went to the meeting. When I was in college, I just tried to like just hunker down and act like everything was chill. And I made it through, going back through Thanksgiving into Christmas. I come back from Christmas break, and my roommate, Patrick, another Patrick, Catholic boy, Patrick goes, look, over the break in Rhode Island, I may have beat up some EMTs. I was drinking. I've got to go to meetings or I'm going to die. I'm like, it's like, I don't have a license. I'm like, all right. So I borrowed some girl's car, and I started taking him to meetings for a while to help him out. And I'm in the
Little
meeting.
did you know.
Little did I know. I was like, oh, shit. And we kind of go around. And the way these guys talked about things, like I didn't do all the same things, but the feelings were the same. Like the rushing, the hiding. You know, I remember reading in a C.S. Lewis book, he describes sin or separation from God's will as ever increasing desire with ever diminishing pleasure. So that's that more. You need more. Like, so no matter how much I would drink, I needed more. No matter what girl I was with, I needed more. Whether if I started rock climbing, like if I was bouldering 5 feet, then I needed to climb 10 feet. And then it needed to be 20 feet. And then the next thing you know, I'm going way up there because it would bring that rush, that excitement, and that danger that made me feel more alive. Which, ironically, due to the suicidal depression, the anxiety being in there, I'd still seek those things out, like on my own terms. So, I mean, I got sober in college, and I went on and became a psychology major, graduated, and took an Outward Bound course to learn about wilderness rescue and learn how to tie the knots correctly, so I could rappel without dying. Went back to that same summer camp and taught kids on that exact same rope course.
That's awesome.
Went out there and helped them through rode the same horses, like I had the experience of the foot going on, because after that horse stepped on my foot, there was another camp counselor there who talked me through that and was like, hey, you had an accident. And he wasn't a trained guy. He was just a guy who showed up. So there were some really important, like, people or angels that showed up in my life that said things to me like, that happened to you, but that's not your identity. So that's the formation of that more heart than scars concept. That,
for sure.
That even though I didn't have my fingers, I could be a rock climber or a mountain biker or a paddler and all those things. I was trying to prove stuff, but when I'd have my nightmares when I wasn't drinking, I would remember, okay, God was with me then, he's with me now.
So why don't we go into that? How did you start More Heart Than Scars? And why did it start? We talked a little bit offline about your daughter's condition, and then
so
why don't we go into that?
Yeah, she has we found out my little girl has a heart defect. She has an aortic she said we were hanging out together. Bicuspid valve disorder. Yeah, she just throws it out. I still stutter for it, but she's 9, but she just says it. I'm like, blah, 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 blah. My kid just nails it.
Yeah. Super sweet kid.
Snow Lily. She is absolutely amazing. So we found out that she had a heart condition, and I was the co-founder of More Heart Than Scars, Wendy Paben. We're now divorced for a couple of years, but we started the charity together right after the Boston bombing. We adopted a kid out of a group home who was a little girl named June, she was now transitioned to Jacob. So June had been through a lot of trauma, and we adopted a 14-year-old girl. And we found out, once the adoption process was finalized, found out that Wendy was pregnant. So we brought June.
I feel like that happens so often, dude, with people that are like struggling to have kids, and then all of a sudden it's like you adopt a kid and it's like, oh, I'm pregnant. I think it has a lot to do with an energetic shift.
It's a huge shift, like your willingness to do it. We even thought when we were like, we're out this weekend, we were getting snowed, and we said to each other, you know what we should do? We should probably start using birth control because it looks like this adoption is going to go through. Maybe we should probably be a lot for you to be pregnant and to have a kid. So let's start using birth control. And we were in the mountains at Boone, and a freak snowstorm came in, and we got snowed in, and we didn't have anything to do, and I was like, oh man,
no TV, nothing
to do, and there was like, maybe I should go get a condom across the street, and it's snowing, and they're like, what are the chances? We've been trying to have a kid for years. What are the chances? That's when it happened. That's completely when it happened. So
that's hilarious.
The adoption ceremony was like in October for June, and Snow Lily was born in December. So we had this adoption ceremony at the Episcopal Church. It's a beautiful ceremony. Family all gets together. The priest ties you together, so you're now one unit. You're a family. We had that thing, and then Wendy at the time was so pregnant. She's super pregnant. Then birthed the kid. June struggled a lot. I mean, June is now Jacob. I mean, I don't want to. It's interesting in the transgender world. You want to say the dead name, but when we adopted June was a girl, and that's
a part of society that I know literally nothing about. And so I was glad that like you had something to share about that, because I think there's differing opinions on it. Right? Some people will call it a mental disorder. Some people will call it it's a genetic thing. So, I mean, there's so many different, and I don't know enough about it, so I don't want to speak on it. But it fascinates me because I've never experienced it.
Right.
I mean, so I don't.
Well, I thought at first I just was getting a tomboy, and whenever I bought June boys' clothes, but sometimes June would cry when someone would call her boy. And I was a little bit confused, but June really wanted to wear boys' clothes. So I'm like, whatever. We're going to play World of Warcraft together. We're going to do airsoft. I was like, I got a little guy to hang out with, plus had a baby at the same time. And so we were working at a children's home. That's been the work that I'm been doing throughout. So that's when I pulled back, when I graduated from college, my first work was, I went to Outward Bound to learn instructor course, but I started working with juvenile delinquents. So I started working with kids in trouble. Right. So my entire mental health career has been kids with mental or physical, emotional disabilities for the past 30 years. So that's where, I was so grateful that people took time to help me. So I was working in the mental health community. That's where we met June, adopted her out of the program, and then I used to run a program, my ex ran a program, but when we adopted that kid, we realized, oh my God, we need to be full-time like foster parent, group home parents to be with our adoptive kid and our biological kid. So we went from being like program managers and doing whatever. The people I used to supervise, I was now being supervised. We went to like, oh my God, we need to help them. Now we needed people coming to our house to help us with our adoptive kid. So that was the environment where that was going on. We found out Snow Lily had a heart condition. And I was just bummed. We ended up leaving the job because of our adopted kid. There was some issues going on there. We needed to get out of there. It was just a mess in the marriage. Not blaming anybody. Just a lot of bad things were going down. We had to find another job quickly. I ended up in a place in a town called Shelby. Shelby. And it's right next to, sort of next to Charlotte and also next to nothing. I mean, it is so country. It's amazing.
Next to Charlotte and nothing.
It's Charlotte and nothing. And somewhere between the mountains and Charlotte is an area called Shelby. Yeah. And the Shelby GT comes from there. It's the only thing that's known about it.
Really?
That's where the Shelby GT comes from. They say they're Shelby GT Ford. I bought a Fiesta from them that I eventually, because of trying to run the charity, was actually bought a Fiesta, which is a sad car purchase. But trying to run the charity, we went so bankrupt and broke, we had our Fiesta repoed. When your Fiesta is repoed following a dream, there's a certain kind of inner sadness.
That's crazy, dude.
So, let's see, how do we get to the point where the Fiesta was repoed? So we're working at this very Christian group. Now, I love Jesus and all, but I mean, I'm barely saved. I mean, I'm a mess. I say fuck a lot. I
love Jesus, but I say fuck a lot.
Yeah, I say love Jesus, but I say fuck a lot. I'm not into the idea of like that my understanding of faith is the understanding that you need to have. The idea of the cross to me doesn't fully make sense. The idea that it feels good when you play with your pecker. If you play with pecker, you're burning in hell. Sounds a little confusing. Totally. Doesn't sound like a loving God. Doesn't make loving God sense to me. What does make sense is God, the creator of the universe that's so spectacular, exists. Like there's majesty and mystery. Okay, and then there's the human divine part of it. So my experience was, whatever Jesus was the one in that situation with him when I got hurt, holding on to me, comforting me, being present, feeling what I feel like. As a parent, you wouldn't want to put your kid through anything you wouldn't go through. Yeah. And so now that I'm a dad, I get much more of a concept of what that is, that physical embodiment of love and sacrifice. That makes more sense to me. Totally. So here I am at a very Christian group home where we have a lesbian daughter. I and my ex would say fuck, way more than we should. Total leg cramp. That's amazing.
Good.
I'm breathing through it.
I think we should invite George W. into the interview in a second. Whenever you're ready. We have George W.
Yeah, George. First of all, I just want to say thank you, Josh, for your service to our country. I think the Air Force is fantastic because it's a lot like the Space Force, but it's different in that they're in the air. And I don't want to force people to believe anything other than America's America. The Iraqistani people may hate us for our freedom, but they love us for our desire for Hooters. Hooters is the new plan. Dick Cheney and I had an idea. We're going to airdrop with the Air Force Hooters because there's bacon and boob and beer. If you show a Muslim person the bosom, the bacon and the beer, they're going to feel better about themselves. I go to Clinton.
I love the Iraqi. When we were doing the Iraqi, Iraqi. Do you know about the bases being there?
Yeah.
Like we were doing last time. It's hilarious.
Well, so I just want to tell everybody, if you played Risk as a child, you understand you have to have permanent bases to reinforce your turns. That's why we keep going to Iraqistani and Afghanistani, so that we can each turn we hold that country. We get the extra men. If you get the extra card, you can turn them in, like get like oil fields and whatnot, opium fields. And we need to be there for, the risk game, the long end. I mean, if somebody had said that.
I love George W.
W's the best. I mean,
thanks for coming, George. I appreciate it for sure. So you guys, your leg cramp good?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah, I said to move out of it. So yeah, here I am. I'm at the YMCA working an extra job because my daughter has a heart defect.
Yeah.
I'm working in a Christian group home where I can't really be myself. They didn't have any health insurance for us. It's $1,000 a month for my kids' health insurance because of that condition.
Yeah.
So I had to get an extra job. I'm working construction.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there at the lifeguard at the Shelby YMCA. I'm 40 years old, feeling sorry for myself. Like things just went off the rails, I had like a career in mental health going, but trying to follow where God was leading me to adopt a kid. It turned out to be way more than any of us could ever imagine. And I'm sitting there and I see this guy, this redheaded guy, come hopping in with a missing leg, jump in the pool, and he's getting out. But I noticed his hands are kind of fucked up. And I walked over and I looked at him and said, "Hey, my name's Zach. I want to see if I can look at your hand and not throw up." And he looked at me like, "What are you talking about?" I showed him my hands. I said, "The last time I saw a pin in the finger, it was one in my finger, and that really freaks me out." Yeah. So I looked at the pin in his finger and I kept it together and we started talking and he found out a little bit about me. He said, I'm going to do this Tough Mudder race coming up. You should do one with me. I don't know. I said, look, you look fat and miserable and sad. You should do a Tough Mudder with me. I'm like, thanks. Cap, like dick, total dick. Exactly the kind of guy I like, And it turns out he ended up being
like it is.
Yeah. And he actually ended up riding his bike with W years later. W actually painted a portrait of him in Portraits of Courage.
Oh,
he was one of the guys. Yeah. So Billy Costello as we call him, Billy Badass, red haired.
Redheads are the most vicious dudes I've ever known.
Yes, they are the vicious dudes. And
they say the freckles on their faces are the souls that they've taken.
Every soul that he took.
Yeah.
So we assemble a team and we get like 17 people together and say, what are we going to call our team? And like he was like asking me a name and I was like, so when kids called me nubs when I was in high school, I used to hit them in the chest with my nub. You just thump. It's solid bone. I mean, you hit somebody with a nub in the chest, they're going to go down. They won't call you nubs anymore. Yep. So I'm thinking of the most offensive name I could come up with. And I go like, we could be Team Nubs and Stubs. Thinking he's going to be like, that's a terrible name. He goes, that's great. Let's make a t-shirt. So he's kind of an artist guy. So he gets the perfect man, the articulated man of like Da Vinci, and whacks off the fingers and whacks off the legs and goes, Team Nubs and Stubs. We made a t-shirt.
You cut them off. Wax. Sorry, dude.
He whacked them up. He cut them up. There was no whacking of the Da Vinci man. And I was sitting at the lifeguard stand early in the morning and I was like doodling ideas. And I thought maybe we should say something to make it a little softer. Team Nubs and Stubs has more heart than scars. And then on the back of it, we said, we face things like amputations, the loss of kids, all these different struggles. What's 10 miles? A couple of obstacles. Wounded Warrior Project found out about us. We got a hold of them. They liked what we were doing. They let us use their logo.
Oh, wow.
And we went and did a Tough Mudder. And there was like 17 of us. We had a great experience. Reconnected with a bunch of old friends that I grew up with. And we did the race. And it was a good experience. And that was October 27th, 2012. And then I thought, okay, that was great. I had a little focus, changed jobs again because the kid situation was difficult, working in yet another group home, moving along. And there was another race just before the Boston bombing. We did one race. This time there was only like 4 of us. It's like 4 people.
Yeah.
And we got a cool T-shirt. We got a cool picture of me in the mud. And I ended up meeting Sean Corvell of Tough Mudder. Sean Corvell's the MC guy. Ended up meeting him, and we ended up at the end of the race together. He hosed me off, I hosed him off, and we had a little conversation. But the following weekend, the Boston bombing happened.
Oh, wow.
So I messaged to Sean Corvell. I said, I don't know if you remember me, but I'm that long-haired, bearded freak that, showered with him. Sean Corvell's this handsome black guy. And he said he was on Friends at one point for like a guest appearance. He's like really talented, amazing man. And he's like, oh, I remember you. And so tell him the story about Team Nubs and Stubs. He goes, I remember Team Nubs and Stubs because he was announcing us going up the thing, and because it was new then to get amputees and groups moving along. So I remember that, and I said about the More Heart Than Scars thing, and he goes, that's the thing, More Heart Than Scars. And I was like, that's what we need to go with. So we just put that out to the world that we were going to start helping people that have been injured. Because if I went on to be an outward bound instructor, mountain guide, climber, I could do all those things with my hands. But you use your hands for all those things. So the idea was, and Billy Badass was incredible, even though his leg was gone, he was just kicking ass. And so we wanted to reach out to other people and say, it's possible And we were thinking about some of the people who were recently blown up, like the middle of the pack runners, those guys that worked their asses off to get to the Boston Marathon, just got their legs blown out from that, and people that are watching it. And I got angry about it, but I didn't want to remember the terrorists. I didn't want to give in to despair like I did when 9/11 went down. I just kind of just sunk.
Right.
I wanted to do something.
Yeah.
And so that's where it began. So we started out with the first idea was we were going to reach out to anybody that wanted to do an obstacle course race and give it a try, since we had done them before, and with Billy. And so we found out about a little boy named Tommy who had cerebral palsy and had a seizure condition, and found out about him and got a hold of the parents, and we decided to outfit his wheelchair into like a mudslayer. We went to a bike shop and we tore the whole thing apart. We added a lightsaber on the back of it, put a crossbow underneath. This kid loved stars, and the parents like, he's not gonna live past 10. You know, he's had the seizure disorder so severe. There's no way, but he wants to have this adventure. We do these races. Can you make this happen? So we put this thing together, and the race was called the Superhero Scramble. It's now defunct, but the idea was like superheroes doing cool stuff. And so we went through some of the obstacles, and he was getting hot, and even though we had the cool wheelchair, it really wasn't working out as well as we'd hoped. And there was one last obstacle at the end. I said, well, let's go do that, which was a big slide that was about 40 feet. And it was water running down it. So one of the guys that I met that helped us was a guy who liked to dress up like Superman. He's missing a leg. And so little Tommy is sitting in his lap. So, yeah, I got those two tied together. They're tied to me, and I'm going down backwards over the waterfall, rappelling. Back to the rappelling here. So here's the guy who, when he was younger, takes a big fall. Now I'm responsible for an amputee and a little boy with a seizure disorder that if he were to hit that water hard, that'd be it. And as we're rappelling backwards, as the rope's running through my hands, as I'm going backwards, tied to them, sliding down the slide, I could start feeling little Tommy start giggling.
Yeah.
I felt him laughing, and I felt him laughing going through the guy who's, I think his name was Thomas Miller. So yeah, I could feel it through his belly into my back, and everybody, the whole race area just stopped, and they're watching, and they're yelling, and it felt like one of those moments where you couldn't tell the difference between heaven and earth. It was like if the company of heaven exists, it was in that the way the sun hit, the way that it felt. I was like, I'm doing exactly
You're in the flow.
what I'm supposed to be doing. This is the thing, you know.
Right.
And as we got down to the end, and the mom was waiting in the water, and he had a feeding tube in, so we couldn't let him splash in the water. We had to like hand him off, and the mom's holding it in her face, and the dad's there, and they're thinking they've kept their little kid in the bubble. They've protected him from everything. This kid's having a real moment like this. Yeah. And we crossed that finish line together, and I was like, all right, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely in.
Yep.
So that is the starting point of that. And from there, we just kept meeting more people. Like I started reaching out, finally owning up the fact that I don't see myself really as an amputee because I'm not missing that much, but the way I lost my fingers is pretty shitty.
Yeah.
I got on the amputee website and I just said, hey, looking for amputees that want to do some races. And this guy said, yeah, I want to do one. I knew nothing about Facebook. At this time, I had 100 Facebook friends.
Right.
We started the Facebook page. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what I was doing. And I was just reaching out saying, trying to well, where do I go next?
Yep.
And so I met this guy named John Powers. He's like, yeah, I'm an amputee. I was like, well, how big are you? I'm thinking I have to pick this guy. He's like, yeah, I think I could lift you. He's like, all right. He's like, where do you live? I'm like, I'm in North Carolina. He's like, I'm in North Carolina. I'm like, well, where do you live?
Perfect.
He was like, an hour away. We ended up meeting up this group called F3, which is Fitness, Fellowship, and Faith. It's a group of guys who get up really early in the morning and work out and suffer together. And
I like that.
Yeah, get out of the fart sack. They said, get out of the fart sack. So a lot of ex-military guys, if you're in your 20s, they just say your name. You get a nickname. First day getting there, my nickname was Nubs. His nickname was IHOP because he was hopping on the crutches. So I get a hold of the guy. I said, let's go do this race and let's do this together, but let's go work out together. So I went and I picked him up in the morning. And a guy named Chap, who's a chaplain's like, why do you call you Nubs? I show my fingers like, all right, you're Nubs. I'm like, can I have a different name? Like, no, you're Nubs. Another guy was like, what's your story, IHOP? I'm like, oh, I can't really drive. Why? You missing a leg? He said, we're going to pray on that. Now, IHOP was a total atheist, complete atheist. At the end of the thing, he's like, there's no way. So at the end of our first workout together, I'm like almost throwing up the hot dogs I ate the night before because I'm a real fitness freak. And this body was by McDonald's and a few things. So So I'm like heaving in the corner, and we're hunkered in. And at the end of the thing, you say your name, you say your nickname. If you're like 20, like they just say your name. And if you're in your 30s, they're like, yep. If you're in your 40, they're like, huh. And if you're 50, they're like, respect. I can't wait to go back for my 50th birthday in a couple months, so I get to hear respect. Yeah. Depending on what age you are going out there. But we did the little thing, and they did a quick little prayer. And then so Chaps, this rough guy, he's been overseas lots of times, seen a lot of stuff. And he's like, all right, God, we need to get IHOP his own car. You can drive his missing leg and whatnot. We need that by like the end of the week. All right, Lord, thank you. Claps. End of the week, there's a car for IHOP. He sold his car. We got a new one. Oh, wow. And we started going and working out. We started doing more races. We were heading towards going up to New York to race together and to make this thing happen. So each time we come across people that it just didn't even seem possible. Like how are these people coming into our lives at this moment? And so knowing that Snow Lily is going to have maybe have a surgery at some point, I wanted her to be brave.
Right.
I wanted her to feel differently.
Yep.
So one of the things that stands out for me why I do what I do is when I was like, I don't know, 14, I'm at this cotillion. A cotillion is like for fancy people. Now, again, I grew up when I was younger, like your ability to fight in the backyard was important, but now I was learning how to dance at these like dance recitals and how to like be very sophisticated. So the rule was you dance the whole dance with the girl. You're very polite to her. When the dance is over, you walk her back to where she got you, and you say thank you for the dance. That was the rule of the cotillion. It's like a big coming out for like debutantes. Right. So I was forced to go to the thing. I learned the waltz. I did the deal. I saw a cute girl. I asked her to dance. Halfway through the dance, she notices my hands and looks at them and just says, gross. Oh. And she walks off. I just stood there for the entire dance. Like everybody was dancing around me, and I didn't know. I had a kid call me nubs or make fun of me or whatever, and I could get into a fight, but I didn't know what a girl would do. And to let go of my hands and just to say that it was gross was like the deepest, like psychological, just like horrible. And so I think about with Snow Lily, I wanted her to experience so many people with different scars that she wouldn't be ashamed of her own. It would be like a red badge of courage. It would be something to not be ashamed of, understand that bad things happen in life. It's okay. Yeah. So that was the deal. So I wanted her to be brave about it. And I want it in the future. Like if she's ever got like a jumper over a bathing suit, if she has to have surgery one day, and if she's going to have a little scar or a big scar, I want the idea of more heart than scars to be big enough so that when that boy sees her that she's been talking to, and he sees that scar, he knows what to say. He's not going to say gross. He's not going to look away. He's going to say, you're beautiful. You have more heart than scars. So that's like the internalized thought that I have, not just for my little girl, but like from that little boy that I was, for any of us that are carrying around either a physical or emotional thing, like a difference, like autism, like where people are going to see you like, okay, you don't quite fit into this. You don't know the social cues. You're afraid of this, or you're awkward, or you're a misfit, like the misfit toys. And that's what we really become. So more heart than scars. I don't know if you ever seen that episode, what was it? Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the little dentist. I think that dentist may have liked boys eventually. I'm not sure. I got a feeling that Yukon Cornelius and that little dentist elf had a special relationship. But but the thing was, I want to be a dentist. But they ended up at the island of Misfit Toys. And on the island of Misfit Toys, there was a boat that didn't float. There was a train that had triangle wheels. There was a squirt gun that shot jelly. Right. And I think that sort of the more heart than scars is sort of that island of Misfit Toys, of things that don't quite fit together. And that's why it seems to work so well. So the more we started helping wheelchair athletes and adapting wheelchairs, eventually Joe Desena found out about us from Spartan and said, well, I want to experience a Spartan race in a wheelchair. I want to experience my own race in a wheelchair along with you other adaptive athletes. Yep. So we put that on, and I'm tying Joe's legs in. He's like, "Why do I have all these people? Why are you helping me?" Like, I'll be fine. Like, Joe, you can't roll 5 feet in the mud of this wheelchair. He's like, "Yeah, sure I can." He gets about a foot and a half. He goes, "I think I'm going to need some help." We get to the start of the race. You know, Joe Desena started Spartan races. He's a well-known guy, more well-known now. He's done lots of podcasts. He's all over the place. He's a really amazing person. And he says to me, "I got to take a leak." I'm like, "Cool. All right, here are your choices. You can kneel and piss, or we can get a catheter for you." And he's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "You said you wanted to race like my best friend Michael here. You want to know what it's like to race in a wheelchair. And so he either has to cath or he pisses on himself. And so you can't, if you're committed to not standing up for the day to ride in this chair, you do that. You stay in this chair the whole day. When you're done, you could stand up at the end of this thing, whether it's 6 or 10 hours from now, your life's changed.
Yeah.
And so he's like, all right. So there he was kneeling. We turned our backs around the thing. I got in the chair. I said, as soon as you get in that chair, you're going to become invisible. People are going to pat you on the shoulder, not look in the eye. They're going to thank you for your service, whether you're in the military or not.
Right.
And they're just going to walk by you. And he did. He disappeared into that race. Even there was cameras around. When people see somebody in the wheelchair, they either stare or they look away or they don't look people directly in the eye. They don't get on their level to see them. And it was a powerful moment that lasted all day long. There's my dog. Come here. Hey, Athena. Hi, baby. Say hi.
Yes, you're a good girl. Yes, thank you for checking on me. I appreciate it.
So, Joe did that race, and it was a pretty powerful thing. The end of it, he said, this wheelchair is yours. Use it. Help other people to have this experience. So that, we've been doing that now. So it's like 70 times now we've done this with Spartan. Yeah. Probably 15 with Tough Mudder, a bunch of other races. We've done it around, in and out of the country. This idea has really began to take off. But one thing that our focus has changed is we started realizing it was good for team building. Yeah. And that was a cool idea, bringing other executives in. But it wasn't until we started working with the kids at the school where I work with Black Mountain Academy, where we got this idea, what would it be like if we brought kids on the spectrum, autism spectrum, to race with us? Would they have that same experience? Because when we came up here to do this, the guy said, oh yeah, I do Spartan races. Yeah. And he goes, it's nothing quite like it. Like you're going along and you're struggling and you see a guy with no legs killing it. And then you're like, oh man.
Check yourself.
Absolutely. I'm going to have to suck it up. Yep. And so that experience, we wanted other people to have that. And we thought, well, that works for CEOs. That works for people that are out of shape on the side of the course. Sorry. If that works for CEOs or that works for other people that aren't in shape, what would it happen for somebody that has a mental challenge like autism where they're focused on sensory overload?
Right.
If there's too much sound, if there's things touching them, the wrong fabrics, social cues are completely off. Like everything that autism is. If you look at the handbook of the autism diagnostic code of saying too sensitive to this, overreactive to that, so all these things, and you said, okay, what would be the worst thing possible for them to do? It'd be a Spartan race. It would, hands down, it's the worst idea possible. And so it happened by accident. The other day, we ended up, I met a woman I was on a 60-hour race, and she said, hey, my son has autism. She's like feeding me candy while I'm out in the middle of the woods. I'm like, sure. She says, you think when my son could help you the next race you got? I'm like, yeah, sure. This kid shows up, 100 degrees, full long sleeve shirt, shorts too far down, combat boots, terrified, shows up, goes, he's going to help. He's barely verbal, and wants to help his friend in the wheelchair do an obstacle course race. Right. Well, he started freaking out in about 100 feet into the race course and his mom could decipher what he was saying, that he was afraid of uneven surfaces. Yep. Well, it was on the side of a mountain. It was going to be nothing but uneven for the next 6 hours. We're going to we have trouble. It's spelled out for you. And so I learned from this Temple Grandin thing, like, if you squeeze somebody, and I've worked with some kids on the spectrum, and I said to mom, do you think there's any chance if I could squeeze him, if you'd let me do that, he might calm down? She goes, he's never allowed me to do it. Yeah. So I checked in and said, hey, is this your friend? And the woman who was in the wheelchair, she lost her son in the war. She was a survivor of polio, and she wanted to do this race in his honor. And this young man knew her and respected her. I said, you want her to finish? He nods at me. I said, sometimes, if I could squeeze people, it might help to calm down. Could I give you a big, big hug to help her? And he nodded. So I picked him. He's as big as you. I squeezed the living hell out of him. He is a big boy. Squeezed him, put him down, and he started in the race. He did the entire race right beside me, the entire way. The mom's crying. I didn't quite understand because I didn't know that much about it. It wasn't until it was all over with, and I was telling the people at the Black Mountain Academy, I was telling them the story during my job interview. They go like, you think we could do that again? Yeah. I'm like, how much chocolate do you got? Because that's how that woman talked to me into it the first time. I was hungry. I was eating MREs. If you're eating only MREs for a day and a half,
chocolate is like, man, it's like gold.
Fresh dark chocolate. It's like, okay. Do you need my soul also, or what else do you need me to do? Totally. So I'm like, all right. So now we got the kids from the school, and we have this idea. A friend of mine, Laura Messner, her brother is on the spectrum. She's beautiful. She won like the Spartan TV show like the first time around. She was a model. She's a singer. She's really athletic. Just a beautiful person inside and out. And when the boys were hearing that she was going to come to the school to meet them, to invite them to do a race, like, yeah, okay. And then we showed a video of her with her brother, and then they got that, her brother has more struggles than they do, and they saw that she was kind to him, and so one kid after the other raised their hand, so they would go. Kids we thought would never go. Yeah. I mean, some of our kids that if they didn't feel they were greeted the right way in the morning might stay in bed for the day.
Right.
Some of the kids that if they got the wrong water bottle or been switched out, or there was a texture issue, or there was a loud sound, or just whatever, would just screw the day over and shut down like fabrics. And so we're like, all right. So the executive director, Brandon Moffat, and I, we went out with the kids. We had a couple of kids who were going, and we were in the Asheville race in Black Mountain on the side of a quarry. And we got about 1.5 miles in, and we're like, this is amazing. Can you believe we got 4 kids this far? Unbelievable. You know, they're going through the mud. They're uncomfortable. People are yelling more heart than scars around them. It's the sensory overload, all of that. You know, helping that wheelchair. We're like, okay, I can't believe we're still going. And then also one of the kid comes up to us and says, look, all of us got stung by bees. And we're looking at each other like, going, all right.
It's over.
It's over. It is over. I mean, a bee sting on a normal day. So you got 4 kids on the spectrum and they're all stung by bees. That would shut down the school, right?
Yeah.
And so we're like looking at each other like, okay, we did good. I mean, this is a good experience. Nobody thought we could do this. We were getting ready to say, all right, well, we're packing up. So the kid looks at us and goes like this. All right, Mr. Zach, I've noticed from YouTube, there's a poultice you can make out of mud, and we're going to put that on each of our wounds. There's enough Benadryl to be shared. If we cut them in half, I think that's okay. So we've got enough Benadryl and mud poultices, and we're going to meet you at the top of the hill. We're ready to go. And we looked at each other like, what have we done? How is this happening? Because they had that moment, like that guy said earlier, when I saw somebody killing it with no legs,
yep.
I felt better. When my excuses felt invalid. Yep. All of a sudden, the kids were caring about, that person in the wheelchair, and they were going to help Jesse get through. And they stopped thinking about it. They call it an autism holiday. Well, that works for CEOs. That works for people with addiction. That works for people that are being self-centered. The magic of More Heart Than Scars, it's not that we're helping that person in the wheelchair. That person in the wheelchair, we are all helping each other. Our misfit, broken parts fit together in a way that makes us more whole than we would be. And so we finished that race and we're like, what have we done? And then we came back and the kids now told each other about it. And they're like, they want to do it. So we got these pictures of these kids covered in mud, and their parents are just calling us and crying. They can't believe it. And then we talked to Joe Desena about it. He goes, I love it. Do it again. And we did it again and again. And so now like 24 kids have completed these races. And Buckley was one of them,
That's awesome.
So, he was first like, okay, I'm ready to go. And he shows up and he's ready to tell me how to do everything. And then he calms down.
Yep.
And he gets more still and measured. And then he was able to focus on somebody else. So it's a kid after kid has completed this race. Even going on and got their trifecta, that means they did 3 races in 1 year. Some of our kids that have graduated the program have come back to do this. And so now it's part of the mythology of the school itself. And so for me, it's like having kids that struggle with the mental and physical invisible scars, along with like things like amputation or spinal injury, like my grandmother, she had nerve damage, spinal injury stuff. Like you put these things together, it's like every piece of my life has come together. So my love of working with the kids and teaching other people to do that and being in the woods, and whether it's like the mountain biking I did or the rock climbing or paddling or horseback riding, all those things are encompassed in what we're doing. So it's like this full circle of my life, like everything. There's this idea that, all things come to good for those who love and serve. And so it's been like this story of my heart being filled up, that I'm doing the things that I love to do, including wearing armor,
right,
having a sword and a shield, the whole thing. Like playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's heavy. So like the Dungeons and Dragons stuff I did as a kid, now it's like all incorporated. I ended up being in Wales on top of a mountain outside of Cardiff, overlooking the city on a horse with a shield that a local guy built for us, awesome. Riding a horse called Merlin. I'm like, okay,
Legit.
You know, so
Can't make this shit up.
You can't make this shit up. It's like if you do the right thing for the right reasons, if you follow your heart and you actually do it in a way that lifts others up, you can't help but be lifted up too.
I agree with that completely, man. What's the actual mission statement? Or like, do you guys have a mission statement for More Heart and Scars?
We want, our mission is to quest for faith, hope, and love, and to live boldly so that others live boldly. We want other people to take that expression, More Heart Than Scars, either apply it to themselves or to others. So it breaks that victim thing. So it goes from a victim stance really to a victory dance. It goes from that moment of like having your head down, feeling like shit at the end of the Breakfast Club, but then, the fist is raised. It's that it goes from that like, wait a minute, maybe, I might be a jock and I might be a criminal and I might be all these different things. I might be broken in these different ways. I might have this diagnosis. All those different things are real, but that's not my identity.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to impart that to the world. We're trying to get rid of that victim stance across the country. So if there really was a way to do it, is to build people up so that they don't live within the bonds of their addiction, bonds of their diagnosis, bonds of their identity. Like, yeah, you have a cool scar on your back. It's part of your backstory, but it's not your whole story. It's a part of your story.
Absolutely.
So here's the question to you. If I say to you, look, I spent some time with you, I hung out with you, I've been listening to your story, watching you do what you do, and I can say to you that I respect you because you have more heart than scars.
Right.
What do those words feel like in receiving that?
Empowering. Definitely.
You earned that.
Yeah, for sure. I dig that, man. No, I like it a lot. And I think that I know what you're talking about because it's like having that feeling of knowing that you're not succumbing to your diagnosis or you're not succumbing to your injuries, you're not succumbing to your disability or whatever is beyond empowering. It's like, man, it's like, I got this. Like, we're good,
We didn't have a way of saying it. So now it's a battle cry. It's like we go out, somebody yells out more heart, then somebody yells back, then scars. Thank you for your service is important. And we needed it desperately. I mean, my dad's Vietnam age. We needed that. But it's almost like it's like now we said and don't actually make connections. Now we just like, it's a pat on the back, thank you for your service, and you just go on.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it isolates down the people, and that's like, well, what kind of service did you do? Was it active duty? Was it out of the country? Were you involved in combat? Were you involved in this? Did you lose an arm? Did you lose a leg? Did you lose this? All these things, and it just was like, wait a second.
That's even within the veteran community.
Oh, that's horrible. I mean, it's like, are you a combat wounded veteran or it was an accident? Was it a training accident or was this, how many enemies did you kill while losing your leg? Or were you just like walking across the street? I mean, it's just like it's so asinine. Yeah, and like within the amputee community, like, well, are you really an amputee? Is it full through the finger or is it part this way or is it that way? Like, well, I lost a finger and I also lost my hip. I'm like, well, all these things would get caught up in like, oh, is it testicle cancer or is it breast cancer? Or do you have breasticle and testicle cancer? It's like, shut up. We get so caught up on dividing people out.
Yep.
And funding and worshiping the disease.
Agreed.
Like, I am this disease. These are my limitations. I am this percentage of disabled. Hear me not roar.
Yeah.
And it just goes out there. Here's where I got offended. And so it's a battle cry. And we want, whether it's veterans, civilians, anybody that's fighting depression, anxiety, can be a warrior. You don't have to have a sword and a shield, though it helps.
Definitely does, dude. I felt so good carrying that shit. Like, when I first got here, I don't know if some people that listen to this podcast will have seen some of my stuff on Instagram, but I was here for maybe 5 minutes.
Maybe.
And we picked up a longbow and some arrows. He's like, hey, you want to shoot? I'm like, sure. Never shot a longbow, but yeah, fuck it.
Yeah,
I'll
there you go.
Twice.
That's right.
So, and then on the gram when we went live, I hit my target, you know, first try, and I was like, oh, dude, that's so awesome.
There were 7 attempts before that.
Come
but
on,
it was
dude.
7 attempts.
My seat.
7, I think, come on. You know, that's pretty good. Like, your 8th shot hit the poop emoji. So you're the shit. 8 shots in. That's better than most people. Usually, I'd have lost 8 arrows, you know.
So it's pretty cool. Yeah. And throwing spears at night, that was awesome. Where do you see More Heart Than Scars going? Like, what if you could envision, like, what the foundation or what the company's going to turn into? What would that look like for you?
Well, I want people to begin. I wanted to have it creep into the culture of the words of how we communicate, so that instead of saying, "Oh, you're so inspiring," or, you know, such and such is a really good, like that girl who lost her arm while she was surfing. Like, she's really a beautiful girl. She's a great spirit. She did the movie, you know that girl who lost her arm. Like, no. What's her name?
Yeah.
Identifying people by their name, not by there's still this inspirational porn, like they zoom in on the injuries, and they're like, oh look, and it's almost like we've like almost fetishized. In fact, some people have a fetish over amputation, over wheelchair. They call it the devotees. Like we almost, some people that are like feel like, oh, my life is kind of shitty, but it's not as shitty as these people. And I want to cancel that out completely. I want to take the victim out of it. So where we go as a company is that battle cry, that song, More Heart Than Scars, begins to echo beyond just Spartan races and Tough Mudders, that people begin to use it in their hashtagging. So like when you see somebody on Instagram you think's amazing, instead of describing like, oh, even though this kid has autism, he's great, or even though she's got this, or even, she was an anorexic, but now she's a weightlifter.
Right. It's like, I'm sorry, but.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but. Yeah. I love you, but. Just say, this person has more heart than scars.
Yeah.
Identify yourself as that. That is like the grounding movement of a vibrational change of speech. How do I see myself? How do I see you? And begin to build a fellowship of people that not feeling disconnected. So the way we do that is we make our own, I've made my own home accessible. So what I'm hoping is on the small idea of what I'm doing, more people pick this up. This is, I think this is a spiritual concept. A Jewish carpenter talked about this idea a long time ago, about faith and love, that applying that love for one another. Like how do you know what Christianity is supposed to be? For me, it's you'll be known by love, how we love one another, how we sacrifice one another, how we lift each other up. And so that idea of that verse, there was a time where, being Episcopalian, I barely know the Bible, but somewhere in there is somebody who's basically on a backboard, he's got a broken back, he's all messed up. So this is where the mission, this is the conclusion of it all is. The guys can't walk. And so his friends are trying to get him to Jesus, but there's too much of a crowd. And the house is filled with people and they can't get there. So they go through the crowd, they carry him through the crowd, they climb up on top of the house, tear apart the roof, lower the person in to the foot of Christ, and he says, your sins are forgiven, and pick up your mat and go. Now, some people freak out about the word sin. But I think we are in a sin problem, and that sin would be the separation from God, and that separation from God is connection to purpose and source and love. We are separated from loving one another. We're separated from loving ourselves. We're separated from the idea that there's something good and my life has a meaning and a purpose. So if Christ died on the cross and is gone, if we are the body of it, so then that miracle of walking through the crowd, I've experienced it at Spartan races and Tough Mudders, where we've come up to an obstacle. Like I remember we were with Justin Falls one time. Justin's an amazing athlete who did fall and break his neck. Makes it easy to call him Justin Falls because how did he get hurt? And we're thinking of doing that. It's simplify. My last name would be Cable. I don't know. He just gets simple. So, but Justin fell off, jumping off of a balcony, trying to show off for some girl. Stupid. He acknowledges it's stupid. But he's terrified of heights. So we got to a wall that was like 20 feet up. Here I am on top of that wall. I've got the rope around my waist, and I've got to set up for a rappel, for a belay to get him up there. And all these people, there's hundreds of people are lined up, and they notice that we're blocking traffic. And they're like, well, what's going on? You can hear the whisper through the crowd. Well, this guy can't walk. Well, this guy's paralyzed. He's a quadriplegic. He fell. He got hurt by falling. The story begins to build. And the people stop worrying about getting over the wall themselves, and they're watching us. And he's pulling as much as he can with his arms. We're lifting him, getting him up, getting him over the top of the wall. And the sun's breaking through the clouds. There's a couple hundred people. And then all of a sudden, that miracle is that we are the people watching the person being carried through the crowd. We're the people in the crowd.
Yeah.
The obstacle of that house, we're seeing that we're going up. We're the people that are tearing down the obstacle, bringing it in. We are the person being carried. We are the person being healed. And that forgiveness comes in, saying, your sins are forgiven. Get up and walk. Just like my faith didn't heal my fingers, they didn't grow back. But my faith was healed in that I don't have to be afraid. Oh. And so I think the healing is, the sin is gone in that piece of that we're not separated from love anymore. Because the community connection, that love is the thing that heals. All of us are in a state of disarray. Our bodies are falling apart. We will all ability to lose, our peckers will stop working, our bodies will stop working, our brains will stop working, will stop. We were all dying. We are all falling apart. It's not a question of if, but when. We are not here to be great, perfect specimens. No matter how many burpees you do, you're still gonna die. And so, how well do you live?
Yeah.
And how do you connect it to others? So it's not in our weakness or our brokenness that makes us separate from one another. It's the very bridge that connects us and lifts us up together. So that's it. The miracle is, I'm doing it at my house. I invite people over. I mean, I've got a veteran living upstairs. And people say, "Oh, are you helping veterans?" Yes, one lives with me. Do people come over? Yes. This is their name.
Yeah.
Instead of like making this proclamation, the big stuff outwardly is in your life. There's people in my life that are in wheelchairs that I've got extra catheters in my house, and I built a bridge for them to get into my home. It's in my house. It's in the relationships that I have. It's how I welcome people in and how I see one another and how I see myself. That if I manage to not overdose and not shoot myself, as the co-founder of More Heart Than Scars, then I would have been successful. And that's my goal, is to not kill me.
Right.
And so it goes down to like, what am I doing each day? Because when we ignite somebody, if you come out and race with us enough times and you do it long enough, you might get a chance to take a knee and you say, do you have more faith than fear? Of course the fear is there. You experience that in your anxiety. Absolutely. I'm not saying the fear goes away. You got to know fear running your shirt. The fear is there. But can you have just enough faith to overpass, just at the tipping point? Do you have more love than hate? Of course, you and I got hate. You and I both have been through some shitty experiences. I can think of some people who I want to crush their skulls right now, but can I fight the fight inside myself to have just a little bit more love than hate? The depression sometimes would be so crippling. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to eat the right stuff. I don't want to do one more thing. I don't want to even do the next right thing. But can I have just a little bit more hope than despair? And do it in the end, do I have more heart than scars? Is the sum of who I am a man that overcame or was overcome?
I dig it, man. I love that shit. Super inspiring, man. If you had one person or one book that inspired you the most, who would that person be and what would that book be and why?
C.S. Lewis is The Great Divorce. C.S. Lewis is known for The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. That's great. That's a great children's story. But he wrote a story about the divorce between heaven and hell. I remember reading it in high school, and I keep rereading it.
What was it called again? The
Great Divorce.
Okay.
And the divorce was between heaven and hell. And so the idea was hell was a lot like London. It rained, it was cold, it was everybody that was dead in hell was a shadow. They're a slimy shadow. Yeah. And every single day, a bus comes through England and says, hey, you leave your mansion, because everybody has a mansion in hell. Everyone's in a mansion in hell, and the rain gets through, and they're just slimy, oily ghosts. But every day, a bus comes through, and you can get on the bus and ride to heaven. Now, as soon as they take the bus up into heaven, it gets so bright. They can see the light. They get out into a field, and they step off the bus, and immediately the grass is so real it penetrates their feet, because they're just shadows. And they keep saying, come further up and come further into the Godhead. Come up to the mountain. God's in the mountain. Come for a walk. And each step these people take, man, they can't do it. They just want to get back on the bus. One woman gets on there and goes, have you heard of me? Like, we have no idea who you are, but we're glad you're here. She's like, I better go back to hell till I get famous. Another guy comes along and says, do you have any doctors to help me with this condition? Like, no, we don't. But if you go further along, you'll feel better. Like, I better get well first. And one guy gets greeted by the guy who killed him. He's like, if you're in heaven, screw it. So he gets back on the bus. One person after another. But the story and what the meaning for me is, there's one guy who has a lizard on his back, like a dragon of sorts. And he's whispering in his ear. He's riding along the guy. So C.S. Lewis, and he's telling a story he had as a dream of this book. This was a dream he had. Right. So he's going along, and this lizard says, if you go any further, they can kill us. Let's get back on the bus. I'll give you sweet dreams. I'll give you good dreams. Let's get out of here. And the angel says, do you want me to kill it? And he's like, oh, couldn't we maybe just partly remove it? Or maybe I could get some treatment, or maybe I could get some help, or maybe I could, take a pill or whatever. And the angel's like, no, do you want me to kill it? And at some point in desperation, he finally cries out for help. And there's a scream that C.S. Lewis describes as like this horrific scream. And the angel reaches in and grabs the lizard and yanks it out its back. And its talons are interconnected in its spine. It breaks his back with blood and fire and gut. It's horrible. It's just this terrible, painful, horrible thing goes down. But then all of a sudden that lizard begins to change and transform. It goes from being like this scaly thing to all of a sudden becoming like hair, and the tail turns into a horse tail, and the mane, it turns into this ginormous stallion. The young man stands up erect, healed, whole,
Yep.
clean, jumps on the back of the horse, and rides it like you've never seen to the mountain, further up and further into the sacred. And so C.S. Lewis in the dream is thinking, what just happened there? Like, what did I just see? And he said that the lizard was the man's love perverted into lust. And when it was put right, he could ride it into freedom. So I look at that with my addiction. Like, I think the things that got me hurt, the things that are broken in my life, can transcend and be transformed as a system of delivery. So I think about that, like if I'm willing to surrender, like instead of looking at this disease I have of addiction and depression and all this, I can look at these things as things that weigh me down, that are just tearing me back. But if it can be transcended, if it can be transformed, it can be something I can use not just for my own self, but for others. So when I ended up on top of a horse in Wales, in armor with a shield, I was like, all right, maybe this God thing, but maybe there's something to this. If there's, here I am in the land of C.S. Lewis on top of a mountain, the sun breaking through, going like, all right. So ultimately what I hope other people do is to hashtag MHTS, and they see something inspiring, come out and race with us, help us to buy another wheelchair so we can help more people. But that's good. But in your own lives, in your own homes, get to know somebody with some struggles, get to know them, get to know their name.
Who inspired you as a person?
Oh,
What person inspired you the most, you think?
Jim Sheffer. There's a program called the Dale House I used to work at. It was a street ministry where we took kids that were unwanted.
Yeah.
And his brother started it, and then he came along with them, and they just brought kids right out of jail. Kids that were locked up, or they were prostituting themselves or selling drugs or whatever. They were runaways. And for the last 50 years, they've worked together. Jim was the type of guy that would care for the students or the kids that were in the home. The kids are basically homeless or in the crisis, or as well as the staff and mentoring them, everyone around him. And he was just this big guy that was so strong, and he was a carpenter.
Yeah.
He used to build things, and he would love the kids and love you and show up in a way. And so we lost him to cancer a few years back, and the way how gentle and kind of what a father figure he was to me is that I try to honor his life and his love for me to other people that feel like that they're not worthy.
Definitely. I dig that, man. If you had one lesson that you learned growing up that you wish you would have either learned it before,
Right.
so you didn't have to go through the heartache, or just a lesson that you're like, damn, man, that was tough, and you could teach that to a younger person coming up, what would that lesson be and why?
I'm thinking about this. Like, it's really lean into the pain. I remember being on a roller coaster, being terrified. My Uncle Jay took me my first AA meeting. I got scared to death on that ride at Disney World. What was it called? Space Mountain.
Yeah.
I was freaked out.
Yeah, that's pretty fast.
Yeah, well, it had cables and pulleys and things. Everything would frighten me. It was dark. It was high. It was scary. It recreated stuff. He said to me, just lean into the turn, he said to me. Just lean. Don't fight the roller coaster. Lean into it. And I've taken that into leaning into the pain. Like whenever I had pain that would come up, I was like, oh, how many more pills can I take? Can I ask for another shot of morphine? Can I get into another shitty relationship? Can I get another? I did so many things to avoid pain. But if I lean into the pain that I'm saying, even like when I was just saying it here, I had a full-on hammy blow.
Right.
I just stopped, took a breath, and leaned into it. Like if you lean into the pain, there's an end to it. You don't run away from the pain. You lean into it. You embrace it. You feel it. You show up for the pain, experience it, and then it will. Once you learn its lesson, it will subside.
Yep. It's so funny because I was talking to a therapist about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I was explaining to her that like traveling and doing the podcast creates a lot of like anxiety and panic in me, and I don't share that with a lot of people. I just kind of go and do my thing. I definitely feel like I'm on purpose and I'm doing exactly what I'm meant to do.
Right.
But there's still some anxiety with that.
Yes.
There's still some things that like I have to deal with internally that I don't usually share very openly about. But she told me, she said, one of the issues with you is that you're fighting it all the time.
Right.
Like, so you have anxiety or you have panic, and so you're finding, okay, like what's wrong? How do I fix it? What homeopathic thing can I take?
Right.
What can I do? Can I drink more water? Can I do this? Can I do that? You're always trying to fix, and it keeps you in that state of anxiety and panic. Yeah. So basically, what's better for you to do is just allow. Just allow it.
Accept
like
it.
when you started like having these anxiety and panic attacks, just allow them to happen.
Right.
It's okay. You know, you're not going to die from it.
You're not going to die from it. And I would think that whatever, I don't know exactly what the Godhead is or how they exist, but I think there is something sacred in all of us. It's your higher self or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But I think that we can all tap into the idea that we're being held. We don't have to be so afraid that,
I like that.
there's a bigger part of you. And like, as you go on and now that we know each other and we do things and more things, and I think about you, like, you know, you can think about like getting a big bear hug from me. There's definitely, like, Jim used to give me big bear hugs. Like, we can lift each other up in this. We're not alone in this, not in the here and now. And I don't think in the hereafter that, you know, that thing that man said to me that changed my life is like, you're not alone. You don't have to be afraid anymore.
There's a guy I want you to talk to, because you were talking about starting a podcast, right?
Yeah.
So when you do, there's a guy named Joshua Coburn that I want you to talk to.
Okay.
He lives in Iowa, and a total badass. You know what I mean? He's got all the tattoos and the dermals and stuff like that, and he's just like such a compassionate, loving, kind individual. You know what I mean? Like one of those guys that truly believes in like what you just said, like you belong. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you're not a misfit. You know what I mean? Like we're in this together. You know what I mean? And he's such an inspiration to me, and like doing the podcast with him, that's the beauty, I think, for me of doing the podcast is the people I get to come across like you. Like, I'm never going to forget this conversation. Never forget the conversations we had offline. You know, it's like, and then there's certain podcasts that I do where it's like, maybe it's forgettable or maybe it's not as inspiring to me. This is one of them that will definitely touch me, and I'll be thinking about it a lot. And Josh was one of those too, because he was, one of the things he talks about is never leaving anything unsaid. He's like, you know, like when you have something to say, just say it.
Right.
And so we were talking about like my anxiety of traveling, you know, and he's like, well, you know, I've been on a plane where like we were smelling like fire, like there was a fire somewhere on the plane. And he was like, shit, you know, I guess we're probably going down, you know, like it is what it is. And he's like, dude, everyone on the plane is just freaking out, you know? And he's like, dude, they weren't telling us anything. So he's like, dude, as far as I know, the whole asset of the plane could be on fire.
Right.
You know, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so he's like, so what did I do? I went back to sleep. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. He's like, at the end of the day, man, everybody that I love and respect know that I love and respect them. I don't leave anything unsaid. So I can leave this world knowing that I've done what I set out to do. And I don't have any anxiety about that. And I was like, dude, that's so funny, because there's things that like when I have anxiety or when I like, those things start running through my head. Like, oh, did I say what I need? Did I do? Does that person know that I love them and respect them and this and that? And like, so it definitely had a huge impact on my life. And I've tried to do a better job of kind of saying the things that I want to say, you know, instead of holding it all in. And I think that Josh would be like an amazing person to have in your podcast because of that, the mindset that he has of like, there are no misfits, you know, we are in this together and like whatever.
Well, we
like,
all are, but people pretend that they're not. And I prefer to be the ones that know that they are. Yeah. And I watch these people like have all these surgeries and try to make themselves look like they're younger. I'm like, no, you're not fooling anybody. These guys that dye their hair, I'm like, suck it up, let it go gray, Jesus. Yeah. You know, I see that like it doesn't. They are actually the ones that don't fit, and they're trying so hard to be something that they're not. And when you meet somebody that says, here are the cracks in my armor, this is where my heart is, this is where the vulnerability is, those are the ones I feel like, oh, I'll bleed for you.
Oh yeah, totally. And that's kind of like I told my wife, like when my hair starts growing gray, which already is on the sides and stuff, I was like, don't expect me to ever dye it. No. Ever. You know, like I'm not going to dye it. Like why?
Yeah.
It's who I am. It is what it is.
That's right.
There are certain things that I would do, you know, that I'm okay with talking about. Like if it's like testosterone therapy and stuff like that, like I'm down with it. Because it's a natural supplement.
Anything that doesn't work, I would be like, yes, I will do that. But, but come on.
I want to stay vital.
I want to stay vital. But my hair, come on.
No, the way I look, it is what it is.
It's rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. We, you know, like we're on our way to death, so we better live our life today.
Totally, man. Well, dude, I genuinely appreciate you coming like on the podcast, being willing to do it, and for opening your home to me, man, and sharing like your life with me, and coming out here on this this beautiful hike and hanging out. If there's anything that I can ever do to like help you out in any way, man, I'm more than willing. What's the best way for people to connect with you if they want to get in touch with you?
Just direct message through either Instagram or the Facebook page, and that's one way to get things set up.
You guys have a website?
Yeah, we got a website. It's just www. I'm so old, I'm saying www. First of all, you just go to www and it's moreheartthenscars.org.
Okay.
And we're looking to do so, like if people want to do team buildings, we'll come to people where they are and do team buildings at their offices, or if they have others other people that have special needs and want to go through courses do that. We're kind of maxed out the number of things we can do now until we get more gear. Like we're going to need to get some more sponsors or pieces of equipment to do this more often in more ways.
So we have nature going on right here, right in front of us. We have a spider fighting a black ant. Dude, this is interesting.
Let's just go into battle.
So who's going to win this?
Well, right now, that's a brown lacrosse spider, and he's moving about one click.
Oh, dude. That's awesome. Anyway, but I really appreciate you, man.
Thank you. I'm glad you came here.
Yeah, for sure. It was a cool experience, man, and I'll definitely be back, no doubt.
Fantastic.
What's the best way for people to help out if they want to donate or they want to help out in any way? How do they do that?
Yeah, they can donate through the More Heart in the Scars page. We have a Patreon account there that we're going to start using to do podcasts and connections and more video sources this way and to connect with other people. So that's one way people can do things. They can just write a check directly to the place that they want to. If they want to, we're going to start working on getting something called Grit Freedom Chairs. They're a really good wheelchair to use. So we want to get more equipment and to reach out locally. So eventually I want to talk to other people that love this idea. They start doing it where they are. So I can empower other people in communities. So yeah, we've got the Asheville area. We do a lot of the East Coast. We know other teams like Team Believe's really good that does this. Oscar Mike does this. Operation Enduring Warrior does this. There's different groups, but we want to connect both civilians and veterans. Team Rubicon does it. There's a handful of us that are doing this. And instead of it being so special and unique and different, I want it to be more available. I want it to be more, instead of being like, I can't believe there was that one guy. Man, I want there to be 20 guys in a wheelchair at the start of the race. I want it to be the place to be more accessible and that it being more common. Because that's the reason Justin Falls initially started when I met him at a Renaissance festival. He was dressed up as Burger King. He's now moved on and has real armor. But I saw him and I was like, we got to joust. And we took a picture together and it was at the Carolina Renaissance Festival. And I said, let me get your number. We got a race coming up. Maybe you should do it with me. So I called the guy up. He goes, why would I do this? I said, oh, so you could dance on Ellen. He goes, I can't dance. So you can get chicks. So you're like, right now I'm having some problems with everything working. So chicks isn't going to be the department. And he goes, why do you need me to do this? I said, because right now there's somebody scrolling through the internet and maybe because their dick isn't working because they can't dance, because they feel broken and alone and they've got a gun in their hand and they're in that wheelchair too. And they're going to scroll through and they're going to find out that a quadriplegic completed a Tough Mudder or a Spartan race, and they're going to put that gun down. This is, I'll meet you tomorrow. We'll start training.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So really, what I'm asking people is just don't kill yourself. I'm tired of burying friends. Don't overdose. Don't kill yourself. But More on the Scars is a great idea, but I want the battle cry used. It's not so much we don't. This is an idea. It's a holy idea. It's a battle cry. Yeah. Man up, woman up. And someone yells out more heart, you say, then scars. That's it.
Well, I appreciate it, brother. If you guys are digging the podcast, it would be greatly appreciated if you guys would go to iTunes or anywhere else where podcasts are supported. And please subscribe and leave a review. It'd be greatly appreciated. It helps out a lot. So thank you so much for listening. And like I said, man, I look forward to linking up with you soon, brother.
We'll do more things. We're going to shoot some more shit later at the house.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Later.
Thank you for listening to My Backstory. Stay motivated and stay connected off the show. Follow at my_backstory_ to be a part of the journey to recovery and to see where your story goes. Or visit us online at hereismybackstory.com.